Hello and welcome to another episode of They Disappeared. I'm your host, Pat Draven. In the heart of the Arizona desert, just east of Phoenix, lies a jagged spine of rock known as the Superstition Mountains. For over a century, dozens of people have vanished in this area. Most of them were out there looking for the same thing: the Lost Dutchman Mine. A gold mine said to be worth millions. A mine that some say never existed. For this episode, I'm going back home to Arizona. Back to the mountains I've hiked in and explored hundreds of times, to follow the trails and retell stories I learned of while I was there. Stories of strange disappearances, improbable accidental deaths, suicides, and even headless skeletons. And maybe, after all these stories are told, you'll have a better understanding of what is happening in these mountains and why the legend of the Dutchman's Mine refuses to die. The Dutchman legend begins in the 1840s with the Peralta family. The Peraltas were a wealthy family from Mexico that had migrated to Arizona, where they supposedly discovered a rich gold mine in the Superstition Mountains. They extracted a fortune in gold until Apache warriors ambushed their operation. Several miners and family members escaped. However, the Apache buried the mine to keep its riches out of outsiders' hands. Years later, a German prospector named Jacob Waltz, also known as the Dutchman, made friends with a surviving Peralta family member and learned the location of their mine. Now, despite this story being passed down for generations, there are many historians who dispute its accuracy. What's not in dispute is that in the 1870s, Waltz and his partner Jacob Waltz ventured into the Superstitions and found a massive vein of gold. But that fortune came at a cost. Much like the Peraltas before them, they were also attacked by Apaches. Jacob Waltz was killed in the ambush. However, there are those who believe that Jacob Waltz murdered Waltz to keep the treasure for himself. Waltz escaped, making it out of the Superstitions with minor injuries, carrying bags of incredibly rich gold ore into Phoenix. Over the years, he would appear in town with saddlebags full of gold, then vanish back into the mountains. When pressed for his secret, Waltz gave only cryptic clues and misleading directions, and if anyone tried to follow him, he would either lose them in twisting canyons, or he would shoot people who trailed him on his trips to the mine. Fast forward to 1891. Jacob Waltz, the old Dutchman, lies in a bed dying in Phoenix. In fevered whispers, he gives a final clue-laden confession to his caretaker, Julia Thomas. Then he dies, taking the exact location of his mine to the grave. Julia and others made attempts to find it, armed with Waltz's clues. Near a sharp pinnacle of rock, north slope, cliffs, and shadows. But the gold mine remained hidden. And from that, the legend of the Lost Dutchman's Mine was born, spreading like wildfire. And treasure hunters from around the world began pouring into the Superstition Mountains, all searching for the mine. With the legend came whispers of a curse. Locals spoke of an ancient Apache thunder god guarding the mountain, angry spirits protecting the sacred gold. They noted the very name Superstition came from the Pima people's superstitions about these peaks. Soon, Stories of strange disappearances and deaths gave weight to those whispers. And by the early 20th century, anyone daring to hunt for the Lost Dutchman ran the risk of becoming just another victim of the mountain's wrath. In the summer of 1931, a 76-year-old treasure hunter from Washington, D.C. named Adolph Ruth showed up in Arizona to hike the Superstition wilderness, seeking the Lost Dutchman's mine. He spoke with locals and carried a worn map, which allegedly pointed the way to the mine. Several ranch hands he spoke with tried to dissuade him. The Arizona summer is brutal, consistently reaching triple digits, and the terrain is unforgiving, especially for an elderly man. But Ruth wouldn't listen. On June 14th, 1931, he was able to convince two cowboys to set up camp for him in a remote canyon, leaving him there to search. Supposedly, before they left, he told them, "I'll find the gold, or I'll die trying." 6 days later, a ranch owner named Tex Barkley found Ruth's camp abandoned at Willow Spring in the West Boulder Canyon. A massive search ensued. Police, volunteers, even Ruth's son combed the canyons and mountains for weeks, but couldn't find any trace of him. It was as if the desert had swallowed him whole. Then, on December 10th of 1931, 6 months after Adolph Ruth went missing, an archaeological expedition found a human skull in a ravine. It was found sitting near a rock formation known as the Three Red Hills. The skull was sent for analysis and was confirmed to be Adolph Ruth's. But most disturbing is that it had 2 holes in the back of it, close together, like bullet holes. A month later, the rest of Ruth's skeletal remains were found near Blacktop Mesa, about 3/4 of a mile away from where his skull was found. His bones were bleached and scattered, as if dragged by scavengers. Among the remains, they found Ruth's pistol, with all the chambers still loaded, and a checkbook containing a message he had written, Veni Vidi Vici, which translates to, "I came, I saw, I conquered." It seems he believed, even in his final hours, that he had triumphed in his quest. But what really happened to Adolph Ruth? The official verdict was that he likely died of thirst and exhaustion, and that his body was separated by scavengers. Authorities dismissed that the holes in his skull were caused by bullets. Instead, they said, the holes were the likely result of animals or erosion. Seen as too sensational to resist, newspapers at the time eagerly published the tale of a treasure hunter's skull found in the Superstitions. Some speculate that Adolph Ruth was murdered for his map, perhaps by someone following him. In fact, a few years later, an author named Barry Storm claimed he narrowly escaped a rifle shot in the Superstitions. He believed a mysterious sniper, whom he dubbed Mr. X, was roaming the ridges, picking off those who got too close to the Dutchman's gold. Barry even suggested that this same gunman might have killed Adolph Ruth. Now, whether that's true or not, such stories cement the idea that someone or something doesn't want the Lost Dutchman Mine found. In June of 1947, a Phoenix prospector named James A. Cravey tried a daring approach to find the Lost Dutchman Mine. He hired a helicopter and had the pilot drop him off in LaBarge Canyon, deep in the wilderness near Weaver's Needle, a stone peak in the heart of the Superstitions, and one of the landmarks tied to one of Jacob Waltz's clues. Cravey planned to spend a couple of weeks searching and then hike out, but he never came back. Searchers found his camp and supplies, but there was no sign of James. The following February, hikers found James' headless skeleton in a rugged canyon a significant distance from his camp. His bones had been wrapped and tied up into a blanket, as if someone had bundled it for carrying. His skull was found about 30 feet away. But inexplicably, a coroner's jury ruled that there was no evidence of foul play, suggesting that James Cravey somehow decapitated himself or that it was an accident. The ruling fueled rumors that there was a concerted effort to keep the Lost Dutchman's mine concealed, or there were people in the Superstitions stalking treasure hunters with impunity. Throughout the 1940s and 50s, disappearance cases and mysterious deaths in the Superstitions continued to grow. In 1949, a prospector named James Kidd rode into the Superstitions and was never seen again. No remains or clues as to what may have happened to him was ever found. His life, before his disappearance, was also a mystery. 18 years after he vanished, the Arizona Tax Commissioner found his will, which reportedly left all of his belongings to any research that will deliver scientific proof that a human soul exists and leaves the body after death. It was later discovered his estate was worth $270,000. In 1951, Dr. John Burns, an Oregon physician searching for the Lost Dutchman Mine, was found shot to death in the Superstitions. Despite this, his death was officially deemed an accident. A year later, in 1952, Joseph Kelly from Ohio also went missing looking for the mine. 2 years afterward, his skeleton was found near Weaver's Needle, with a bullet hole in the skull, and that too was somehow ruled an accidental shooting. In 1955, a hunter named Charles Massey was found shot between the eyes with a high-powered rifle. The verdict? An improbable ricochet from his own .22 caliber gun. And in 1956, a Brooklyn man named Martin Zawitho disappeared while hunting the treasure. He was later found dead with a bullet wound to the temple. His pistol was discovered beneath his body, and his death was determined to be a suicide. Perhaps it was, but why travel across the country to kill oneself in the Superstition Mountains? The pattern was chilling. People turning up dead, often from gunshot wounds. And each time, the official explanations were unsatisfying. The discovery of bodies in the Superstitions didn't slow down in the following decade. In October of 1960, a group of hikers stumbled upon a headless skeleton at the base of a cliff. The remains were later identified as a missing Austrian student, but no other information was found. Less than a week later, another skeleton surfaced nearby, belonging to a painter from California. His cause of death was unknown, and it didn't stop there. In 1961, a man named Charles Bowen was found in a shallow grave with a bullet in his back. His death was ruled a suicide. That same year, a prospector from Denver, Colorado named Walter Morey was found near Weaver's Needle with a gunshot wound. His death was actually ruled a murder by person or persons unknown. That case has never been solved. In the summer of '61, a longtime hermit named J. Clapp disappeared. Clapp was known as a peaceful recluse who actually lived in a cave in the Superstitions. His headless skeleton turned up years later, cause of death undetermined. It seemed death has many faces here, sometimes violent, sometimes mysterious, but always unpredictable. Whether it's simply misfortune or the result of a deadly landscape and misadventure, someone or something actively protecting the mine. It goes without saying that treasure hunting is a business rife with paranoia and competition. Some of these killings could have been rival prospectors eliminating their competition. In fact, in 1959, two prospectors named Stanley Hernandez and Benjamin Ferreira found what they thought was the Dutchman's treasure, only to find out later that it was pyrite, also known as fool's gold. But during the discovery, in a fit of greed and madness, Stanley shot and killed his partner, Benjamin. Greed, it seems, can turn the best of friends into mortal enemies. Perhaps that explains how some of these bodies were discovered. Yet there are still those who insist there is a curse on these mountains. A curse that strikes down anyone lured by the Dutchman's gold. Perhaps the most haunting modern case is that of Jesse Capon, a 35-year-old treasure hunter from Denver. Jesse worked as a bellhop at night, but his real passion was the Lost Dutchman. He had read over 100 books and researched maps about the mine. Jesse was described as a gentle giant, known to be quiet yet likable. He eventually became obsessed with finding the Lost Dutchman. So in November of 2009, Jesse fulfilled that lifelong dream and headed into the Superstition Mountains alone, intent on finding the gold. He told no one of his exact plans. When he didn't return, authorities and family were left with only fragments. His abandoned campsite was discovered in a canyon, along with his Jeep, wallet, and cell phone. Inside his tent was a copy of the book The Sterling Legend, which is known as the Dutchman Treasure Hunter's Bible. It was left open, as if recently read. But despite extensive ground and air searches, there were no signs of Jesse. He had seemingly vanished into thin air. For 3 long years, Jesse's distraught mother and search teams held out hope. The Superstition search and rescue volunteers went out nearly every weekend, scouring perilous terrain for Jesse. I myself went out one weekend to look, starting near where his campsite was located. It was 2 years after he had vanished, and we didn't find anything. And a year later, I would learn why. In November of 2012, high on a sheer cliffside in a remote area of Tortilla Mountain, a searcher spotted something in a narrow crevice. It was a boot with a bone still inside. Wedged 35 feet up on the cliff face was Jesse Capon's body. It had been mummified by dry air and time. To end up in the crevice, Jesse would have either fell into it from above or climbed into it accidentally and became trapped. Eventually, it would take an elaborate technical recovery to get him out. The exact cause of Jesse's death remains unknown. No evidence of foul play was evident. Most likely, he slipped while climbing alone, searching one of the many caves and ledges where he imagined the treasure might lie. His obsession led him to a literal dead end in a cliffside tomb. Jesse's tragic story served as a stark warning, yet it did little to quench the lust for lost gold. The Superstition Mountains continue to claim lives well into the modern era. Even with GPS, cell phones, and modern survival gear, people still go missing or die searching for the Lost Dutchman's mine. The curse, if that's what it is, doesn't show any sign of stopping. In 1984, a prospector named Walter Gassler, who had been searching for the mine for decades, told friends and fellow prospectors of his discovery, reportedly showing them gold ore as proof. That spring, Walt headed back into the mountains one final time to retrieve the treasure, and never returned. A ranch hand found him on May 4th dead on the trail, apparently of a heart attack. His pack was full of high-grade gold ore, very similar to Jacob Waltz's legendary gold. And then something strange happened. Shortly after his death, a man claiming to be his son approached Tom Cullenborn, a local historian and friend of Waltz, and asked him for any maps or notes that his father may have left behind. Tom handed over some of Walt's documents and even the backpack that had been recovered with his body. Then, months later, Walt Gassler's real son, Roland Gassler, showed up, looking for his late father's effects. He knew nothing about the imposter. Whoever the bogus son was, he had disappeared along with Walt Gassler's secret map. And because no one ever came forward to say they found the mine, many have speculated this imposter's motivation was to keep the mine's location a secret. In the summer of 2010, at the height of Arizona's blistering July heat, 3 friends from Utah, named Curtis Merworth, Ardian Charles, and Malcolm Meeks, all ventured into Superstition wilderness in search of the Lost Dutchman's mine. Curtis had attempted the same trip by himself the prior year and had gotten lost, needing a rescue. But he was undeterred. This time, he brought 2 friends with him on a quest for riches. The men were ill-prepared. They didn't have cell phones and only told a few people of their plans, expecting to be out of the mountains in 3 days. When they didn't return, a massive search operation was launched. Rescuers scoured the canyons on foot and horseback using dogs, while helicopters circled overhead. But like so many prospectors before them, the 3 men had vanished into the labyrinth of canyons, cactus, and heavy brush. Days turned into weeks, and with daytime temperatures reaching highs of 115 degrees, authorities reluctantly called off the search. The men were presumed dead, claimed by the Superstition Mountain's unforgiving elements. 6 months later, in January of 2011, the remains of 2 bodies were found, and then a third nearby. All were later confirmed to be that of the 3 missing men. It's believed they had all perished from dehydration and heat stroke. The remains of Curtis Merworth were discovered a mile from where the other 2 men's remains had been found, suggesting they may have been split up or gotten disoriented in their desperate search for water. Their story, while tragic, seemed straightforward. The harsh desert environment is just as lethal as any curse or murder. Yet, it reinforced the Superstition Mountain's deadly reputation. These 3 modern-day adventurers died every bit as mysteriously as those before them, their exact paths and final moments unknown, their dream of Dutchman gold unfulfilled. The Superstitions are a rugged wilderness, with sheer cliffs, hidden mine shafts, deadly wildlife, and extreme heat. It's easy to get lost here, dehydrated, or make a fatal misstep. Add to this a combination of bad luck and bad planning, and yes, you could end up being a pile of bones that some hiker or searcher stumbles across years later. The official reports all seem to lean towards death by natural causes, sometimes with the help of a wild imagination to explain away inconvenient bullet holes, which is why pure chance feels inadequate to explain the pattern of shootings and headless skeletons. Many of those deaths could be attributed to human greed. The lure of the Lost Dutchman might attract unsavory characters, people willing to rob or kill to obtain another person's clues or gold. Just imagine it. Two treasure hunters crossing paths deep in the hills, each suspicious the other might find the loot first. There's a confrontation, a gunshot, and one more body left to bake under the desert sun. We know murders happened, like the Fool's Gold killing in 1959. So could there have been a few more murders that were either staged or determined to be the result of accidents? It's certainly possible. There was even speculation of a single serial killer, a shadowy guardian of the mine, picking off intruders one by one. Barry Storm's alleged sniper, Mr. X, embodies this idea. While there's no concrete evidence of an actual long-lived sniper, it's an eerie thought. A rifle scope glinting on a distant ridge, watching those who tread too close to the Lost Dutchman's mine. Then there are supernatural theories, which run wild in small mining towns in Arizona and among Native American elders. The Apache legends speak of a thunder god who guards the mountain's gold, punishing those who seek it. Some locals say the entire range is cursed or haunted and warn people to stay alive by staying away. Nighttime campers have reported strange lights dancing on mountainsides or hearing ghostly screams echoing through the canyons at night. Tales circulate of an old Apache shaman spirit. Old miners will tell you that Jacob Waltz's restless ghost roams the Superstitions, leading prospectors astray or frightening them into madness. A few even claim there are entrances in the Superstitions to some hollow earth or another realm, guarded by creatures that do not take kindly to trespassers. Yes, the Superstitions have even garnered a reputation for UFO sightings and bizarre phenomenon. Even aliens have been folded into the mythos here. The area is said to mess with compasses and electronics, as if it has some magnetic energy. Maybe that could explain why so many people get lost here. Of course, the idea of a curse cannot be completely dismissed, and I'll tell you why. The very phrase, Lost Dutchman's Mine, carries a dark mystique with it, a curse of greed. Perhaps those who seek boundless wealth meet boundless misery. Certainly, many who went looking met something, whether it was a bullet, a fall, or their own inner demons. The curse might not be a literal hex, but more of a pattern born of obsession. Jesse Capen's mother said he was beyond obsessed. And in each of these stories, the theme is obsession. The legend itself takes hold of a person's mind and leads them to take unnecessary and even deadly risks. It's impossible to say exactly how many lives the search for the Lost Dutchman Mine has claimed. Arizona historians estimate the toll might be several dozen, while others say the number is much higher. And every death adds another layer to the legend. It's as if the story of the Dutchman's gold has itself grown hungry and demanding, requiring fresh sacrifices now and then, just to keep itself alive. There's a saying around Apache Junction. The mine is either lost or it's haunted. Maybe both. Each generation, new treasure hunters arrive, and the Superstition Mountains stand ready to test them. Most return empty-handed, but alive. And others never return at all. Their stories becoming part of the chilling tapestry of the Lost Dutchman's curse. I myself have hiked the Superstitions, never wandering too far off path. Even in the searches for Jesse Capon, I never considered going further into the desert canyons, and I never felt the urge to go looking in that endless wilderness for something that may not exist. But if you find yourself drawn to these mountains by the promise of treasure, remember the stories you've heard. Recall the skull of Adolph Ruth, the headless skeleton of James Cravey, the lonely grave of Jesse Capon wedged in stone. Recall that long list of names known only to ghosts and old newspapers. The Superstition Mountains do not give up their secrets easily, and if you press too hard, you might find yourself added to their secrets permanently. The desert has a long memory. And on certain nights, when the wind howls just right, people say you can hear faint sounds carried from the deep canyons. A pickaxe on stone, a distant cry, or echoing footsteps that stop suddenly. Perhaps it's just imagination. Or perhaps it's the restless spirits of those who vanish seeking gold, still wandering, still digging, forever cursed by the Lost Dutchman's secret. Ask yourself, would you risk it? Would you defy the curse? Many have tried and paid the ultimate price. Because in the end, cursed or not, the Lost Dutchman's mine remains lost. And the Superstition Mountains, they keep their dead. Thank you for listening to this episode of They Disappeared. It was written and hosted by Pat Draven and produced by Katie Hayes. For more content, visit our website or Facebook pages where you can message us directly.